Awesome lesbian couple. Evil and intimidating points update. Good afternoon, Genesys gamers. I'm MBT, and this is 100 Point Playtesting. So we had a MIKANKO deck list in the tank ready to fire. Then the points update happened. And now, we've got a piece of unplayable garbage. Presenting MIKANKO.
Uzuhime going to 18, MIKANKO, Noble Twins going to 18, whatever.
So here's the list, adapted from a brew by Kuma's Cards. Link to that in the description. As always, I'll give you a background about the archetype, a little bit of a discussion about what I hope the deck can do, and of course the card by card. But first, this video is sponsored by Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Deck. Looking for a place to find inspiration for Genesys decks? Well, look no further. I've already spent years telling you about how Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Deck is the best repository of deck lists, strategy articles, third-party assistance with alternate ways to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And card collection management on the internet. But right now, it's also the best way to find Genesys lists. You can sort by deck type, filter high-level tournaments to see what's been working, and download decks you see in any format you desire. That's why I'm proud to be sponsored by www.ygoprodeck.com. Now back to the video. With that, let's mess with MIKANKO. You may not know it, but MIKANKO just got some really good support. A new spell card, coupled with a new main deck monster, and with the payoff of a rank 3 that just straight up wins the game, pushed it into playable deck territory. And prior to the points adjustment, it looked as if it would not only be tiered, but would also be the #1 greatest going second deck in Genesys. But then, things changed. 18 for Shinbu. 18 for Uzuhime. This deck was dead. It was deader than dead. But that's not going to stop me from trying to force it. We filled the empty space that would be extra copies of Arabesque and Shinbu with Ahsoka Pillar, more breakers, and garbage. There's just some garbage in here. Hopefully we can still freeze them out. So with that, let's get into the card by card. First up, our Kaijus. We've got 3 Jizikuru and 3 Lava Golem. We're playing 4 monsters, 3 Ahsoka Pillar, which if summoned adds an equip spell from your deck to your hand. Cool. 1 Hare, 2 Huli, and 2 Sanaki, the MIKANKO Devotee. This does a lot of stuff. Lets you target a MIKANKO card you control, return it to the hand. If an equipped spell becomes equipped to this card, you can specially non-illusion MIKANKO from your deck, and you're locked into MIKANKOs from the extra. And if sent to the graveyard, can equip to a monster on the field. This does everything for every one of the MIKANKOs. The only downside is that it doesn't have the protection effects if equipped. We've got 3 copies of Hey Trunade, 3 copies of Hidden Armory, 3 copies of Illusion Gate, and get used to hearing that in Genesys. 3 Mystical Space Typhoon, 1 Great MIKANKO Ceremony, 1 Axe of Fools, 1 Double-Edged Sword, 1 Maewashi Dori, triple Fire Dance, and then 1 of the 33 pointed Ohime, the 18 pointed Shinbu, which sends a MIKANKO from your deck to the graveyard, then sets a MIKANKO spell trap from your deck, except for Noble Twins, and it locks you into extra deck monsters that are MIKANKOs for the rest of the turn. You can also banish it to special summon a MIKANKO from your hand or deck that's a ritual monster. We've got MIKANKO Water Arabesque, 3 Preparation of Rites, because we really got to get to Ohime, and 1 Premature Burial. In the extra, we've got a bunch of cards that are decent to send. Theoretically, we can make Dragon Gate, Drill Driver Vespinato, Lancer, Downard, Acid Golem, Nightmare Shark, Karam Pulse, Dante, but usually we're going to be making this Uzuhime the Manifested MIKANKO. If special, this adds an equip spell from your deck or graveyard to your hand. It cannot be destroyed by battle. Your opponent takes battle damage you would have taken from battles involving this card, and if this card attacks in battles at the end of the damage step, you can detach a material, and it can attack again in a row. That is not a once per turn, so on its own, this card can functionally just win the game. In the side, we've got 3 Skullmeister, 1 Nini, 1 Rivalry, 1 Spirit Walk, 1 Xyz Unbreakable Barrier, and then a Rondo and a Tragic Twin Twined Jewels. This is a going first package that I took from Kuma's Cards that I think is really excellent. It's kind of an extra deck lock and kind of a mechanism to just Rondo your opponent if they force you on the play, which you kind of have to expect they're going to do. Finally, we're playing 3 Twin Twister and 3 Darkhole, depending on what the deck demands. So with that, let's get into the games. Our match is up against Madolche, a deck that I think is criminally underplayed in Genesys. Our opponent's going to begin with a copy of Mangeline and follow it up with a Petting Cesseur. That Petting Cesseur is going to summon from deck a copy of Pudding Cess. Then afterwards, he'll overlay for a Glass Souffle, activate the effect, and make a copy of Chocolate a la Mode. They'll shuffle back the card in the yard and trigger the chocolate for an Angeli, whose effect will trigger for a Hoot Cake to get a copy of Messengelato from deck. This is all pretty standard stuff so far. Their Mess Gelato is going to grab a copy of Ticket, and then at point of resolution, they can just fire off the Ticket and overlay for a copy of Glass Souffle again. The Chateau will shuffle back the last monster as they trigger Ticket and activate Chocolate a la mode for another Mangeline and a Mess Gelato. This is 2 4s, so they'll grab a Promenade and then overlay for a Tiramisu and the new Tira Fraise, which is just Tiramisu at quick speed. Okay, we'll draw for turn and totally nullify the board. Let's tribute over for Lava Golem and Chizukuru before going Hidden Armory. We hit the Shinbu off the Hidden Armory mill, and they're going to go for Promenade. Afterwards, they'll trigger the effect of the Ticket. There's still some stuff we can do here. We'll go for Preparation of Rites to grab Ohime. Then we can activate the Ohime afterwards. They will Herald of Orange Light. We'll chain this copy of Great MIKANKO to get Huli, then Great MIKANKO for a Sanaki, which can trigger in order to equip to our Huli. They take 33 here as we walk into the Jizukuru, and then they're going to take another 1,000 off this Lava Golem, but they're nowhere near dead. And unfortunately, this deck's in a pretty prime position for just having something that actually beats my board. They're going to go from Pudding Cess into Tiramisu, which does not target and does not destroy, so really makes our Huli look totally fraudulent. From here, they'll trigger the effect of the Ticket, get another Mangeline, and we'll scoop it up. So it's time for game 2, and our opponent's going first once again. They have almost exactly the same open. In that last game, if I had used the Great MIKANKO ceremony to summon out an Ohime, would it have been destroyed by the Herald of Orange Light? I didn't do it because I figured I'd just go for the safer play off the Huli, but now I'm really curious. They're going to go for the Patetting Cessor here off the Mangeline. They'll activate the Patetting Cessor to get a copy of Pudding Cess, and that's a couple of 4s that they can overlay for a Glass Souffle, trigger the effect, and rank up into a Chocolate a la mode, which will trigger off itself in order to get an Angeli. Angeli here for Hoot Cake for a Mess Gelato, and you know the rest. Our hand looks good. Hey, Trunade is really interesting because this deck has kind of a problem dealing with the back row. Monsters it doesn't really care about, but back row can be a huge issue. And while Hey, Trunade isn't perfect, it's better than nothing. They're going to go for 2 4s once again, trigger the effect of the Mess Gelato, and this time they have not only a set copy of Promenade, which is scary in and of itself, but they have another set card as well, so we'll have to worry about that. All right, we're going to begin with the Hey Trunade, which will force out the Promenade. From here, they have a couple effects to trigger. They will go for Ticket for Patetting Cessor, and then Patetting Cessor for an Angeli, but we still have to play. We'll tribute over for the Kaiju. Then we're going to go for the Ohime, so we can get a copy of Shinbu to our hand. They're going to shuffle back our Huli, which is frustrating because of the premature burial, but the Shinbu will actually get us a guy in yard anyway. We are going to send the Great MIKANKO Ceremony. They're going to use Final Bringer the End Times on our set copy of Arabesque, but we can use our Premature Burial on Sanaki, which will trigger Sanaki for Huli. We'll normal summon a Sanaki and then overlay for Uzuhime, grab a Fire Dance, and from here we just have lethal. We'll go to the battle phase, attack over this copy of Glass Souffle, we'll detach, and because we detach Sanaki, we can equip it to the Huli, so there's no targeting anymore, and then we'll get in 3 times for 3k. So it's time for that all-important game 3, and you really get into a frustrating situation after you've won a game with this deck, which is, do you think your opponent is going to force you on the play? Your deck doesn't do a ton on the play, but it does put up an end board that features guys that are kind of difficult to get rid of, so decks that are confident in their going first plan may force you on the draw anyway. I assumed my opponent was going to make me go second, and I am paying for it. This hand has nothing I want. Okay, we'll begin with a copy of Preparation of Rites. There's some stuff we can do. That's going to grab us an Ohime. We'll activate the effect of the Ohime into a Herald of Orange Light. Disastrous. Okay, well, we'll go for a Hidden Armory, and oh my god, we can pre-mat back that Ahsoka Pillar until I realize what they sent for the Orange Light, a Keldo the Sacred Protector. Back goes my monster, and down goes the game. Maybe this copy of Mystical Space Typhoon will keep me alive. My opponent's going to begin once again with the copy of Mangeline with the Patetting Cessor with nothing in yard. This should be the end of the game. They're going to go for the effect of Quacky Ducky here. Get a copy of Angeli and summon back the Patetting Cessor, who actually doesn't care how they were special summoned. They'll bring out the Pudding Cess and then overlay for a copy of Glass Souffle, trigger the effect, go into a copy of Chocolate a la mode, shuffle 1 back, trigger the Chocolate a la mode for a copy of Angeli, and then afterwards they'll trigger the Angeli for a copy of Hoot Cake. Hoot Cake here can banish from the yard, and they'll get a copy of Mess Gelato here, just afraid of the back row because they already have lethal. They grab a Chateau, and then afterwards they can go ahead and overlay for a Tiramisu, which can contest the back row on their way to just doing lethal amounts of damage. Out comes another Mess Gelato, whose effect will trigger once again for a Ticket. Now we've got Chateau and Ticket and 8,000 points of damage on board, so I don't think there's too much we can do from this position. They'll trigger the effect of the Ticket and the effect of the Salon for a copy of Promenade, just for safekeeping, another Mess Gelato before they trigger its effect for dessert, and go to the battle phase, getting in for well over lethal. Woof. So we're back with the deck, and yikes, that coin flip. Let's do the pros and cons. First, the pros. 1. The going second cards in this format are really good. From Trunade to Kaijus to Lava Golem, there's a lot to be said for just simplifying a game state. 2. The deck does usually put up a reverse OTK. There are very few hands that actually whiff. And 3. These cards are hard to understand and harder to play into. You're going to get a lot of mileage from opponents who just don't get it. And the cons. 1. So the lack of a normal from Golem and Armory Arm doesn't matter in the TCG, since you can almost always get access to a MIKANKO from Arabesque and Sanaki sends. Here, both of those cards are at 1, so sometimes you're going to need the normal and just lack it. 2, the deck has choke points. Sitting across the table from MIKANKO, it can be hard to figure out where to interact with them, but after a few games, it just becomes laughably easy. And 3, it's kind of boring. Like, blind second decks that rely on breakers often just feel like Go Fish. I want to play Yu-Gi-Oh! All in all, don't play this.